It was late December 1986 when most of our combat engineering battalion was dispatched to the rugged Central American country of Honduras. Our mission? Constructing a forward airstrip just north of the Rio Coco, a river that served as the natural boundary between Honduras and Nicaragua. For me, it was my first tour outside the U.S. And no, I wasn't particularly thrilled about spending Christmas amid the sweltering jungles of Central America. But that's the military life. Holidays, comfort, even safety, they're luxuries, not guarantees. What I didn't anticipate, however, was just how different this operation would be. What we encountered in that jungle wasn't guerrilla resistance. It was something far worse. My name is Robert. I served in the U.S. Army. And this is the story of what they called El Diablo. Sometimes, when you walk into the unknown, the fog isn't just metaphorical. It's real. It hangs between you and the truth. You step into it, and whatever comes out the other side may change you forever. Back in the 1980s, Central America was caught in chaos. Nicaragua, in particular, had suffered disaster after disaster, earthquakes, corruption, and finally, a violent civil war that divided the country. On one side stood the Sandinistas, socialist revolutionaries supported by Cuba and the Soviet Union. On the other, the Contras, counter-rebels covertly backed by the United States, fighting to overthrow the regime they claimed was just as corrupt, forced from their homeland. The Contras had fled across the border into Honduras, where the U.S. was now helping bolster Honduran defenses. The possibility of Nicaragua crossing the border loomed large, and that's why our unit, the 27th Airborne Engineer Battalion from Fort Bragg, was deployed. Our mission was to build an airfield near a small village called Hamastron. It would serve as a strategic entry point for U.S. aircraft just 15 miles from the Nicaraguan border, a not-so-subtle message to Sandinista forces, stay on your side. Although we carried live rounds, this wasn't an official war. We weren't allowed to engage unless we were fired upon first. It felt a lot like the early days of Vietnam, quiet, tense, and dangerous in all the wrong ways. While most of the unit worked on the airfield, a group of us were paired with Honduran soldiers to conduct visible patrols near the border, monitoring enemy movement and discouraging hostile activity. I was a comms guy, not much use with construction, so they stuck me with the patrols. Our recon mainly came through outdated aircraft surveillance and radio transmissions from Sotocano Air Base, hours away. Most of the time, any intelligence came too late to act on. But that day, it came just early enough. Around 10:30 a.m., while out on patrol, we received a curious message. A small watercraft, or something that resembled one, was spotted heading upriver several miles east of us. We were given coordinates and instructed to intercept from the riverbank, possibly identify it. Quickly, our squad organized and sped off in Humvees down narrow jungle roads, past scattered farms and shacks, navigating the rural terrain as best we could. Once we hit the designated point, we left 3 men with the vehicles and the rest of us, 6 in total, trekked toward the river on foot. The terrain opened up into pasture land, less jungle, more grass. We crossed 2 barbed wire fences on a cattle farm and found some cover behind sparse trees just shy of the river. From our concealed position, we could clearly see the Rio Coco ahead, and Nicaragua just across the bank that we split up into positions. I was paired with Sergeant Perez. Everyone took cover and waited. The supposed boat hadn't arrived yet. Then, visual confirmed. Something's coming downriver, dark object. Could be a log. Copy. Movement erratic. Changing speed. Could be animal. No visible passengers. We strained to see what was coming. From behind the trees, I spotted something glide into view. There. That's it. Moving like a croc, but too fast. Too big. The water suddenly parted, and the thing lunged from the river. We froze. It was no boat. No log. And certainly no crocodile. It surged onto the shore, a hulking serpent, massive and dark-scaled, bigger than anything we'd ever seen. At least 75 feet long by rough count. It moved with terrifying speed, heading straight toward a group of cows in the pasture. It rammed them violently, sending animals crashing to the ground like bowling pins. One cow didn't get up, then the creature lifted its head, towering 15 feet above the ground, selected its prey, and slammed it down with a skull-shattering crunch. We heard the bones snap. Wallace, One of our squad mates raised his rifle instinctively. Perez yelled, "Don't fire. Do not engage." The snake didn't care about us. It opened its jaws, wide enough to swallow a barrel, and began dragging the mangled cow back toward the water. Like something out of myth, jaws clamped down, hoisting the full-grown cow like a rag doll. It slipped silently back into the river. Gone. Just like that, we stood there in stunned silence. No one spoke. No one moved. Eventually, the whispers started. How long was it? 80 feet, maybe more. Pace it out. 3 guys stepped it off from river to where we saw the tail leave the water. Estimates between 31 to 34 paces. We agreed, 75 to 80 feet. The surviving cows hobbled in the field, some with broken legs. Someone muttered, "That thing might come back." We all agreed. Time to leave. When we got back to the trucks, command radioed in asking if we'd spotted the boat. Perez told me to say we'd reported in person. Back at base, Perez began radioing the report, but he was cut off. Radio silence. Return to base. Immediate debrief. We all knew something was up. When we arrived, a group of officers and Honduran officials awaited us. No smiles. No greetings. Just cold stares. One by one, we were separated. My name was called. I was taken to a car, flanked by 2 soldiers and a lieutenant, and driven to the far end of the base. Away from everyone, they brought me into a plain room. Just one light. One table. No windows. At the far end sat another officer, a major, stone-faced, and serious. "Tell me what happened, soldier." So I did. Every detail, from the moment we left the Humvees to the snake vanishing into the water. No one interrupted me. No one reacted. Then, the major leaned back. Again, I repeated the whole story, word for word. Silenced, he looked at the door behind me. Then back. One more time. I want everything. By now, I was shaken. Why were they pressing so hard? Were they trying to catch me lying? Or make me lie? But the truth was all I had. So I told it again. The major stood and left. I could hear him speaking Spanish in the hallway. Not fluently, but enough to catch words. El Diablo. Muertos. Coco. The devil. Dead. River Coco. When he returned, he leaned over the table and unleashed a storm that he mocked me, yelled at me, said I was exaggerating, called it just a big snake, maybe 20 feet long, said it had a dog in its mouth, not a cow, accused me of damaging diplomatic ties, spreading lies, dishonoring the mission. He didn't threaten court-martial, but the threat was clear. Change your story, or else that I didn't know what to do. But he made it clear. I had no choice. Last time, he said. Tell me what you saw. I lied. A log. Floating debris. A big snake with a small animal. Nothing. Unusual. He nodded, satisfied. Dismissed me like a schoolboy that I was told to say nothing. To anyone. Ever. Not even to the guys on my own patrol point. 3 days later, I was sent back to Fort Bragg. Alone. On the flight, a Honduran soldier sat a few rows behind me. Midway through, he approached and whispered, "May I sit?" I nodded. He leaned in. "You saw El Diablo, and he saw you. But he let you live. That means you are a good man. Most men who see him vanish. You are lucky." Then he made the sign of the cross, got up, and returned to his seat. When I got back to Bragg, things were off. People treated me differently. I wasn't shunned, but I wasn't the same. Within a month, I was transferred to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, near my hometown. Unusual for someone who hadn't requested reassignment. They even gave me my own apartment. No roommate. No witnesses. Was it a favor for staying quiet? Maybe. Over the years, I researched what we saw. Massive snakes. Fossil records from Colombia suggest some ancient serpents reached over 40 feet. But 80 feet? That's no fossil, that's something else. And if the locals along the Rio Coco are still telling tales about El Diablo, I don't blame them, because I've seen it, and I'll never forget.